So we will begin with an opening statement from the Libertarian candidate, Heather Mullins.
Okay. Hello, my name is Heather Mullins, and I'm the 23-year-old Libertarian candidate for State Senate. I was born and raised right here on Cape Cod. I attended the public schools, worked a handful of jobs, and even did a few semesters right here at Four Seas. I've experienced firsthand how difficult it is to not only improve, but just maintain the quality of life that we currently have. I believe that there is a dangerous misconception among some voters that a grassroots candidate like myself is less likely to fix things than, let's say, an experienced politician. While often we deal with problems, we go to the root of the problem in order to fix it. And Nobel Peace economist Edmund Phelps wrote a book called Mass Flourishing: How Grassroots Innovation Created Jobs, Challenge, and Change. It almost appears this regressing economy has been caused in part by traditional voting habits that prevents third-party candidates like myself from bringing grassroots innovations and ideas up to Beacon Hill. No two people have all the answers, and no two parties do either. We need change on Beacon Hill and not tradition. So why am I running? With every new tax and fee adopted, middle-class families can no longer afford their mortgages and lose their homes. Low-income families can no longer afford their car insurance, and they lose their cars and then their jobs. There's a $36 billion growing budget that is sucking middle and lower class families dry, harming our quality of life and threatening our children and grandchildren's future quality of life. And we need to take a stand and be the change that we wish to see. As a mother of a beautiful, smart little girl, I have the job of protecting her health, quality of life, and overall happiness. If I were elected as your state senator, my job would be to protect the health, quality of life, and overall happiness of everybody in this district. I hope that with your support together, we can expand on new ideas and bring back to Beacon Hill the grassroots innovation and dynamism that built this country.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins. And now an opening statement from the Democrat candidate, Matt Patrick.
Hello, my name is Matt Patrick, and I'm running for the Plymouth and Barnstable Senate seat. I'm a former 5-term state representative from the town of Falmouth, and I'm running because I love to make good things happen, and my record bears that out. When in the House, I was personally responsible for successfully leading the effort to close corporate tax loopholes, which raised $200 million for our cities and towns. It also made it easier for businesses to work in Massachusetts. I was also instrumental in writing sections of the Green Communities Act that made it possible for municipalities, homeowners, and businesses to install new solar electric systems. Writing sections of the Green Communities Act, these sections have contributed to making Massachusetts the national leader in clean energy jobs. It is the fastest growing sector of the economy. I was also instrumental in sponsoring and passing the Energy Efficiency Appliance Act and the Property Assessed Clean Energy Act. I got funding in my district for the Sagamore Flyover, $500,000 for the town of Bourne to pay for the kids from the Mass Military Reservation, and $100,000 annually for Cape Veterans Clinic. And I also was responsible for getting potassium iodide for all Cape towns. Using my experience to pass legislation, I plan to make sure that the Commonwealth has a stake in the new offshore wind industry. You might remember that I was the only Cape legislator that supported Cape Wind and blocked several attempts in the legislature to kill it. Construction will begin early next year, employing about 1,000 people in the construction phase. Another 55 full-time people will be employed to operate and maintain that project. We have a wonderful opportunity to be part of this new offshore industry, and I'm going to work to make that happen. Thank you.
And now our candidate from the Republican Party, Vinny deMacedo.
Thank you very much. And let me take this opportunity to thank the Cape Cod League of Women Voters and the Cape Cod Times for holding this event so that those of us who seek elected office have an opportunity to share what we believe we can do on behalf of the people of the Plymouth Barnstable District. First, I want to share a little bit about myself, because I know many people here on the Cape may not know me. Although I've been a state representative for 16 years, I was the youngest of 7 children that immigrated here from the Cape Verde Islands. I was 6 months old, and we moved to Dorchester. After that, we went on to grow up, I grew up in Kingston, Massachusetts, went to the Silver Lake Public Schools, and following that went off to college in New York as a business administration major. And that really was my passion. But eventually, coming back, working with my brother and starting my own business, I started to understand the role that government played in my business, despite the fact that I had an opportunity to live the American dream, coming to this great nation and having these phenomenal opportunities. I realized that there wasn't a lot of understanding as a small business owner on Beacon Hill. And I decided back in 1998 to take a run for office. And believe it or not, I pulled it off by 189 votes. Since that time, over the past 7 election cycles, I have had the privilege of my community returning me back to Beacon Hill and advocate on their behalf by basically a 2-to-1 margin. And I'm honored by that, because to me it sends the message that I have advocated on behalf of them, and they've given me the opportunity to continue to serve them. When I've gotten to Beacon Hill, I've tried to make the case that it is so important to try to create an environment and an economy that is good for creating jobs. It is important in this, for all of us here. Jobs are the #1 issue. I have worked hard because I've created jobs. I look forward to the questions tonight, and I thank you for this opportunity.
And now we will begin with a question from Ryan Barber, a reporter from the Cape Cod Times, and the first responder will be Mr. Patrick.
Great. I've been given 3 questions tonight, and they should touch on your 3 respective towns. So to start in Falmouth, Mr. Patrick, recently there has been quite a bit of controversy surrounding the 3 land-based wind turbines in Falmouth. Earlier this year, actually, some Falmouth residents were among several statewide who came to actually testify against a bill that proposed actually expediting the permitting of land-based turbines throughout the state. What do you think needs to be done with regard to the 3 turbines in Falmouth, and what generally do you think the state should do to support or perhaps stop the development of land-based turbines?
Good question. I didn't think I'd get something like that tonight. But let's preface everything by saying we had a referendum in Falmouth, and by better than 60%, 60 to 40, the people in Falmouth voted to keep the wind turbines. But that doesn't make the siting of those wind turbines perfect. We have to remember when we site wind turbines on land that people within probably a half a mile to 3/4 of a mile could be impacted. There's about 10% of the population that are severely sensitive to noise, and I think we found them in Falmouth. And what we should be doing is going out of our way to move these things out of that area before we put them up. And secondly, I think we need to tell the developers, whoever is going to put these things up or making the proposal, that they anticipate that they may have problems, and they prepare to either buy those homes, those homeowners out, or make their homes soundproof. These are things that can be done. They're being done in Europe, and I think that's a proper way to do it.
The same question, Mr. deMacedo.
Well, I'm glad this issue came up, because I actually went and met with these people from Falmouth, because I had heard their frustration. They asked me if I would come and talk to them to see what would happen, what I would do if we're elected. And the challenge is they're up, and it's very expensive to take them down. But I do know what I did when I was in the legislature. I know that the governor proposed a siting bill that would have taken out local control, and that was something that I was very much opposed to and fought, because it is very important for communities to have local control where these things are going. And it was a challenge, it was a fight, but it was a fight that it was well worth taking. And we are now seeing the implications of what happens when it doesn't happen that way. And it is real. This is a real issue for people in the district. Some people, a wind turbine doesn't affect them whatsoever. For some people, it's like scratching a chalkboard. It incredibly affects their lives. And we have to have wisdom in how we affect and do this. I certainly like the concept of renewable energy, support the concept of renewable energy, and there are opportunities where it works. But we have to be mindful of how that happens. I guess just recently it came to my understanding that the company that put up these wind turbines, or the manufacturer, actually told the town that they had a responsibility. They needed to sign off on responsibility because these wind turbines were going to have a higher decibel than what was allowed by law, and they needed to take that liability. That's something else that's very concerning, especially because it's affecting neighbors, and that's not fair.
The same question, Ms. Mullins?
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, if there's ever a problem with somebody that, like physically can't deal with like the vibrations of the sound from a wind turbine, then absolutely we can there's so many options for alternative energy that it's a no-brainer to find some other solution that we can use. I mean, this is the year 2014. I mean, we've landed on the moon. There's so many alternatives out there. We just have to be willing to give them a shot and give them a chance. So I completely believe that each town should definitely have control over what types of energy and whether or not windmills are put up, and consult with the people in each town, because they know what's best for them and they know what's best for their people. So I'd love to have more power back into each individual town to let them choose which types of energy they want to use. My job as a state senator for me would be more or less to stress that, in terms of things like nuclear energy, if we put up things like windmills, for an example, is it worth the, maybe like decreased value in your home, the eyesore for your property? Is it worth it in exchange to remove a public safety problem that could, prevent a disaster?
The next question will begin with Mr. deMacedo.
Great. Rep. deMacedo, in your hometown of Plymouth, there's, of course, the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station, which actually led the country last year in the number of shutdowns. While it's in Plymouth, it's attracted a lot of attention here on the Cape, where citizens are worried about what might happen in the event of an event of catastrophe there at the plant. What do you think needs to happen with Pilgrim? Do you think it needs to be closed down? Do you think it is fine as things are going now? And what do you think needs to be done in terms of disaster or emergency preparedness with regard to the Cape and Islands?
First, let me say that I've dealt with this issue for the past 16 years in the legislature. It's very difficult if you're a legislator not to have to deal with every day the challenges of having a nuclear power plant in your backyard. I've grown up in the area. I've lived in the shadows of the nuclear power plant my entire life, other than when I moved to before I moved to this country. And I'm concerned. As a matter of fact, the Senate President, Representative Coulter, wrote a letter to the NRC and concerned about the relicensing of that back in 2012, prior to relicensing. But the reality is that's not a local decision that we make or a state decision. It is a federal decision and a federal policy. I'm very concerned about the way that the federal government has treated the town of Plymouth insofar as our spent fuel rods. I think if you have heard that Yucca Mountain was going to be the nuclear spent fuel rod repository, and what happened is we spent $10 billion, we built this nuclear repository, and then the President of the United States said that we're not going to send any nuclear spent fuel rods there. That was a broken promise to the town of Plymouth. And the reality is we in Plymouth now become the nuclear spent fuel rod repository, and we need to be compensated in that behalf. And I've worked with the federal delegation, the state delegation, the local delegation to try to continue to make that case, because I believe it needs to be a safe facility. But the reality is it's there, and there's nothing that we can do about it. Is it at the end of its life cycle? I believe it is. But the reality is how do we make it operate safely while it is there?
Ms. Mullins, the same question.
Okay, so I had the privilege of actually attending the public forum hosted by Energy and members of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission back in April. And I definitely witnessed from both sides like a huge communication problem. And I fully believe that, you know, everybody that works at this plant is doing the absolute best of their abilities to run it safely. You know, they're just as affected by it as the rest of us, but it doesn't erase the problems and the safety concerns that it poses to the rest of us. So without doubt, I definitely believe that the Pilgrim plant needs to be shut down. But what needs to happen is there needs to be a collaborative effort from both the people wanting to shut it down and the members on how to do that safely and effectively. Other nuclear plants have been shut down before. It's not impossible. And I'd be willing to bet that members of the NRC don't live in the community and they're not affected by whatever might happen with the Pilgrim Power Plant. Well, I am, and we are. And there's plenty of ideas for how to, you know, take the 14% of the energy that goes to residents of Massachusetts and create that energy elsewhere. It's, we just need to actually like collaborate. We need to have more than one public forum a year. We need to engage in more discussions, and we need to start creating solutions and a step-by-step plan on how we can transition into closing it down.
Mr. Patrick, the same question.
Yes, Pilgrim will probably shut down on its own accord because of economic reasons, especially if the EPA mandates that they have to put up cooling towers, which they should do. What we need to do, and Vinny mentioned this, is make sure that Plymouth is made whole. They're going to be holding the dry cask storage. It could be forever. And they have to make sure, we have to make sure that they are compensated adequately to maintain security around those casks. I also believe that the casks should be built and stored above the storm surge level. Right now they're at about 25 feet above sea level. That's not enough to prevent them from getting wet during a storm surge, especially during a nor'easter hurricane type thing at high tide. We can replace that electricity very well with more energy efficiency, which, by the way, is the best way to provide new sources of electricity. We call them negawatts. And we also have to get serious about developing offshore wind, as I mentioned before. Cape Wind is coming online. It's going to provide many jobs, and it's also going to keep our electric bills low over the lifetime of its existence.
Okay, the next question, we will have Ms. Mullins respond. Ryan Barber, Cape Cod reporter, will ask.
All right, to go to Bourne, where you were from, Heather. There's a proposal to actually extend the commuter rail line from the Middleborough Lakeville station to Buzzards Bay. What is your stance on this proposal to extend commuter rail to that existing station? And what are your thoughts on possibly extending it over the bridge and upgrading the infrastructure on the Cape side to possibly extend it even further?
I definitely wouldn't be opposed to it. I actually didn't know that they were considering doing that. I know that they had the Cape Flyer come back to life over this past summer. And I'm just a little like confused as to why they'd be extending it. I mean, I feel like, is it, going to be a year-round thing? Is it like a summer, idea? I mean, if it's year-round, then we should probably create more jobs before we start spending money on ways to get here.
Okay, the same question, Mr. Patrick.
I'm a big advocate of extending a commuter rail down to Buzzards Bay. I think it makes a lot of sense for the village of Buzzards Bay, and in fact, I sponsored and got into the budget an amendment to study bringing the commuter rail down to Buzzards Bay. We got to do more of it. We got to get cars off the road if we're going to be serious about global warming issues, and this is one way to do it. It might cost a lot of money to fix up the tracks. I think that's the big holdup. Coming across the canal is an altogether more expensive issue. We have different tracks, and it would be a much more expensive thing to try to do. But extending the commuter line down to Buzzards Bay is certainly something that needs to happen.
Mr. deMacedo, the same question.
Thank you. Being from Plymouth in 1996, we had the commuter line extended to the Plymouth area, and I will say that it has been an incredible economic engine, has proven very successful for the community. We've seen a lot of growth since that happened. Although the reality is when you do this, these are expensive endeavors. I know there's a lot of talk about trying to do that to Fall River, New Bedford area about extending. But however, the costs continue to rise. Initially it was $1 billion, now it's $2 billion, and it's upward and onward. The question I think we have to ask ourselves is how much is this going to cost from the Middleborough line to here? We do have already some infrastructure in place. Is it going to, what is the bottom line of cost? I always I think we should take a look at these things. The question is, can we afford them? And it is something that I would certainly take a look at. I would certainly advocate on behalf of our community if it's feasible and it makes sense, and that frankly the community wants it. Because I know that for some communities don't want it. I know that for some people they're very concerned about having a train going through and having to blow their horn as they go through these intersections, and that is a reality of these trains. It is a very good concept, but we want to make sure that it's a very good idea if the community supports it, and I'd like to get a sense of where the community stands on this.
This next question is a question from the audience, and we'll begin with Mr. Patrick. What can a state senator do to assist a region with job creation?
It's a great question, and that's what I'm basing my whole campaign upon. I think a state senator can really lead the way. I talked earlier about sections of the Green Communities Act that I wrote that made Massachusetts, that contributed to making Massachusetts the leader in the creation of green energy jobs. We now have about 5,000 businesses in the field, and they are employing upwards of 70,000 people. It's the fastest growing sector of our economy. What I intend to do is put that knowledge, my experience in passing legislation, into pursuing the offshore wind jobs. Besides Cape Wind, which will provide us with a jumping off point, the federal government is leasing 740,000 acres 12 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. And then there's another section proposed in between Block Island and Martha's Vineyard. These are going to be big wind farms, and they are going to provide a lot of electricity. Various universities have done studies that have shown that if we put enough wind turbines off our east coast, we will be able to provide about 1/3 of the nation's electricity. And that's where we're going to have to go if we're going to fight global warming, and we're going to come up with resources, our sources of electricity that will enable us to take our coal-fired power plants and our nuclear power plants offline.
Same question, Mr. deMacedo.
Thank you. As I first said when I got in, opened up, I said that I got in this because I wanted to make Massachusetts a better place to create jobs. I thought it got more and more challenging as a small business owner. I have spent my entire 16 years in the legislature trying to make Massachusetts a place that is better for creating jobs. And I'll give you just one local example of how a state senator can do that. We just recently had a situation with Cape Cod Community College where they had a program that they were putting in place to teach students how to work in the aerospace, the aero industry right here at the airplanes as mechanics and whatnot. And we were able to get that in the budget. However, the governor vetoed that money in the budget. I, along with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans, worked together to override the governor's veto, both Republicans and Democrats, to get that program restored back here, because that is the type of thing that creates jobs. It is important to find a way to train people. It is important to find a place where the economy can grow, and there are examples time after time that we need to do a better job of encouraging businesses to stay and grow here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Ms. Mullins, the same question.
Okay, I think a great first step in what a senator can do to help create jobs in a region is lessening the tax burden on everybody that's all these small businesses and lower class people. I mean, the less taxes they're paying, the more money they have to hire new employees and make more profits and open up new stores. We need to also like lessen the regulations. I mean, every new regulation hurts a business. I mean, maybe, you know, Walmart can afford to comply and meet all the standards, but not every small business owner in Massachusetts can. And I mean, small businesses are actually what create a lot of revenue for tourists. And like when tourists come in the summer, we enjoy these like small businesses all along Main Street. And I've witnessed over the last 10 years that, you know, you drive down Yarmouth and Route 28 and there's so many buildings that are like ghost towns. It's like kind of sad, it's scary. And it's like, I remember it being so much more full of life when I was a kid. And it's sad to see the regressive nature of like what's going on right here on Cape Cod, my home, where I've been for, you know, 23 years. And like, I think definitely, hands down, like lessening all these regulations and decreasing taxes and lifting up the lower middle classes will definitely create more jobs.
The next question, we'll begin with Mr. deMacedo, related to school funding. Do you believe that there should be any reform to the Chapter 70 funding formula?
Absolutely. That has been a challenge. I think when that formula was put together, it was very unfair specifically to this region, and frankly for all of us in the suburban communities. There's a perception somehow that maybe the Cape or communities like Plymouth are wealthy and they can afford it. But the reality is that's not the case, and there needs to be a fairness in that. So I certainly would have no problem reopening that. But what I can say, what I have tried to do in light of the reality that is a very, very difficult thing to open up, because if you get more here, there's going to get less there, and you're going to have a fight on Beacon Hill. So recently what we tried to do when we started cutting funds in 2012 is I co-sponsored legislation with my colleagues to take what they call reversions. At the end of a budget cycle, we know things were tight, but at the end of a budget cycle, there's often reversions that come back at the end of the budget year. We fought to get 50 cents on the dollar of whatever came back to reversions to go back to cities and towns in the form of local aid through Chapter 70. And we were able to get $65 million more for our communities in that regard. So that is something clearly that I think needs to be addressed, and I will continue to fight on that. But I will be honest, it's a difficult challenge to do.
Ms. Mullins, the same question.
Yeah, in terms of like the developments and stuff like that, and you know, having like affordable housing in each town, I think each town has its own needs. I mean, the people are different, the jobs are different. Each town like should be in charge, and they know what's best for their people. I mean, who is, you know, Boston to tell us in Plymouth that we need to put up this development or that we should do this? Like, we should let each town decide for themselves what they need. And I mean, you know, each town also needs its low-income people that deserve to have affordable housing, because, you know, we need people to bag our groceries and make our coffees and, you know, clean the bathrooms at our children's schools. I mean, these are all jobs that we seem to take for granted. But, you know, like when a community has a demand and they need people for those jobs, then they'll produce housing that people can afford. So.
Mr. Patrick, the same question?
Yeah,
Chapter 70.
I'll agree with my former colleague that changing Chapter 70 funding formula for schools is going to be very difficult, mainly because a lot of other communities are much more favorably addressed in that funding. What we need to do is open it up and look at property values. They tend to put too much of a factor on property values in this formula. It puts coastal communities at a disadvantage. We need to look at that. It's not going to be an easy thing to do. But let me just say this. Education is not inexpensive. All too often, when we need to cut the budget because revenues lag behind, we go right to local aid and aid to education. That should not be done. If we're going to have to cut the budget, I think local aid and aid to education should be the last thing we cut, and certainly should not be cut more than anything else in the budget. We need to make that part of our standard formula and budget when we go back to look at school funding. But again, it's not inexpensive. It's going to cost money. And we need to be ready to foot that bill, because education is the future of this Commonwealth.
Another question related to the school funding, and we'll begin with Ms. Mullins. This is asking if you're in favor of expanding charter schools, and do you feel that the funding formula for charter schools is fair?
I'm just going to start off and say now everybody knows how I feel about Chapter 40. So moving on, back to the schools, I actually like, as far as charter schools, I'm all up for the idea, but the original reason that we developed charter schools is that we could kind of test out and see what worked and then apply those same concepts to public schools. And what I see is that there's more and more people that are they want to leave public schools and go into charter schools. And for me, it's just, my daughter's going to be going to public schools. The majority of people's kids go to public schools. And I feel like we need to just start applying what works and doesn't work at charter schools into the public schools instead of just building more and more charter schools, because it still leaves some people out. And so, personally, my daughter goes to public schools, and I really care about all the teachers and all the people there. So I would love to make it fair, you know what I mean? Like, every child deserves a good education, not just, the few that get selected for charter schools. So, we need to just take what works from these charter schools and apply it to the public schools.
Okay. The same question, Mr. Patrick?
I'm not in favor of expanding charter schools at this time. I think the money is too tight, and charter schools tend to take money away from public schools. The money that is for public school students follows those students to the charter schools, and oftentimes the public schools are not reimbursed. The public schools become the schools of last resort, and they get all the hard luck cases, and it becomes very, very expensive. I don't think it's fair. Again, I think we need to look at our policy in that area before we even consider creating more charter schools. Thank you.
Mr. deMacedo?
Back in 1993, we revamped our entire education system, and part of that was the creation of charter schools. And the concept behind that was to create alternatives as well as competition in education. And frankly, I think if we can look back now, I don't think anyone can say that Massachusetts doesn't have one of the best education systems throughout the entire nation. We consistently have scored the highest in the NAEPS test in 4th grade, 10th grade, and that's a testament in both math and science. That's a testament to what we have done. I believe that charter schools have made our public schools and our charter schools better. Competition is always a good thing. I know for myself, I'm a small business owner, and I have a gas station. Right down the street, there's another gas station. Well, it would probably be nice to not have another gas station down the street, and because I would be the only game in town, and people would have to come to me. But the reality is the fact that I have a gas station makes me a better business. And I think that competition is always good, and I think that's what has happened through the charter schools. It has made all the systems. We have a rising tide in charter school in the town of Plymouth, and frankly, it works very well. They peacefully coexist, the charter schools as well as the public schools, and I'm frankly proud of both of those institutions.
This next question will begin with Mr. Patrick. Are you in favor, or do you agree or disagree with the new gun law here in Massachusetts and its restrictions? Are you in favor of more laws regulating firearms?
I'm in favor of the gun law that just passed. I think it does the job that it was intended to do, and we will have federal checks, I believe. I'm sure I'll be corrected by Vinny. But I believe we do have it institutes federal checks at shows, gun shows. I think Massachusetts has a pretty strong system for regulating guns. I know I like the part that requires that our chiefs of police have the final say over who gets a gun permit, and I guess that was extended to rifles, or I believe in this last bill. It was just for handguns?
No,
You have the floor.
They're both. Go ahead. It's your turn.
So it is both. So yeah, I think it's a good bill. It's would I do more? I'd have to look at all of the issues involved, and before I take a public position on that.
Mr. deMacedo?
This new revision that we made to the Chapter 180 laws was frankly an amazing feat. We had a bill that came out of initially from the Speaker of the House. Frankly, it was a terrible bill. It would have really gone after what I consider the law-abiding citizen and really not go after the individuals that we were trying to affect, which was those individuals with mental health issues, those individuals who were committing crimes. We want to go after the criminals. And we spent some time, and it was a lot of effort. But this particular piece of legislation that came through this last semester, this last session, is one that both the gun advocates and the gun control advocates supported, because we sat together, we worked together, Republicans and Democrats, tried to find a balance, a reasonable approach, and everyone sat down, and it was very difficult. It was, I voted against it a few times, but ultimately, in the end, I think we put together a very fair piece of legislation that respected the gun owners. We fixed a lot of the problems that were in the old Chapter 180 law, where individuals would apply for reapply for their licenses, and it'd take over 90 days to get it, and then they couldn't use their guns. Now that's taken care of. We fixed a lot of the mistakes that were in there before, and we've addressed some of the real serious issues that I think all of us make us incredibly concerned about, what we've seen happen at Sandy Hook and at Aurora, Colorado.
Ms. Mullins, the same question.
Am I in favor of more laws regarding firearms? No. I have a daughter, and it's kind of a little uneasy for me to think about the fact that, my right to own a firearm to protect my daughter from, any intruders or anything like that is at the discretion of one person. I don't think that's right. I think, and the other thing is that, we keep having all these laws and regulations regarding firearms, but none of it's free. And so basically what's happening is you're turning rights into paid privileges. I mean, if it's all about safety and people want to do background checks, that's fine, but you should be asking yourself the question that if somebody shouldn't be owning a firearm, then they should have already been convicted of a crime, and you should be asking yourself, if they're that dangerous, why are they back out on the streets? And then we need to look at the laws and make sure punishments fit the crime. Because once somebody is on the streets, they should have their rights. And if there's a problem and we're letting dangerous people back out onto their streets, then even all the more reason that the rest of us need to own firearms, right? So I don't think that there needs to be as much regulation and laws regarding firearms as there is today.
Okay, the next question related to drugs. And this person makes a statement about agreeing that there is an ever-growing drug epidemic affecting the 14 to 25-year-old population on Cape Cod. How would you support the effort to provide more rehabilitation and recovery services as opposed to incarceration? And what would you do specifically as a state senator to work to solve this problem? Mr. deMacedo.
Well, that goes to me. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
This is, when you call it an epidemic, it is an epidemic. It is one of the most frightening things that I have seen in my 16 years in the legislature. Over the past 5 years specifically, we've just seen this spiraling out of control where young people don't understand the implications of playing around with heroin and ultimately get addicted, and it just destroys their life, and they will do whatever it takes. So I do support the drug courts, and frankly, we've put together a very strong piece of legislation that is going to make it easier for individuals who become addicted to get into the treatment that they need. We've enhanced our drug courts so that these people aren't just going to jail, but they're getting rehabilitative services. We're helping them. And we really need to continue to work to do a better job of educating young kids about the dangers of drugs. It's like a joke. It's no big deal. And I recently, in this past budget, actually filed an amendment to create, and I know this sounds crazy, Drug Story Theater. And the concept behind this is a very small amount of money, but just to get this off the ground is to have people who were previously addicted go in there act out as impromptu acting and tell a story about their addictions and through them, and then talk back and forth to the kids and go into the school systems. Have the support of the town of Plymouth school system superintendent, as well as the people in addiction services, and I think both of them can help each other. And I think it's a very simple concept that is going to educate young people, because sometimes they don't listen to us, the older people, but they listen to their peers, especially those whose lives have been destroyed by drug addiction.
Ms. Mullins, the same question.
Speaking of peers, this is an epidemic that is like hugely affected my generation. I know so many friends that I was once in classrooms with, like first, second grade, trading Pokemon cards. They're now either behind bars, in rehabs, like their lives are falling apart. I mean, it sucks that I have to like cut these people out of my life, but I'm always there for them if they ever need help. I can't be around that kind of stuff, but I hate seeing my generation and former friends and so many young adults' lives get thrown away and get tossed in jails. I mean, we spend billions on this failed drug war that solves nothing. The amount of money we put into drug task forces, the courts, like, you know what I mean, sheriff's offices, attorney fees, housing them, feeding them while they're in jail. I mean, these are people that have a problem. I mean, if we were to decriminalize drugs or even legalize drugs today, how many people in this room would turn around and go start using them? The people that are going to use are the ones that are going to keep using. And we need to stop paying billions and even trillions, if you look at it as a nation, to a government to stop us from doing something that we're not going to do. And we need to start using that money to create more community problems and look at the root of the problem. We might not be able to save the people that are already addicted and going down these paths, but we can look at the next group of first graders, and we can put more things for them to do, because idle hands is the devil's playground. And if we give them things to do, and we make more communities, and we make more opportunities from them, then maybe they wouldn't be in these positions to start dabbling with drugs in the first place.
Mr. Patrick.
I think, Heather, well said. Good for you. I don't think it makes sense to put nonviolent drug offenders in jail. I think it's a huge waste of money. It probably only makes them hardened criminals. I know the legislature addressed some of these issues. They did not address funding for rehab and counseling. That's what we have to do. But when you look at the cost of putting people in jail, it really makes sense to take that money and put it into counseling and drug rehabilitation. And I also think we need to really buckle down and improve the economy and provide and make sure that we help the private sector create the jobs that will employ people and give them a real reason for living. Anyway, it is a tremendous issue, and I'm glad that the legislature has moved on it already. There is more to do. We have to make sure folks get adequate counseling, and again, this is going to cost money. We're going to have to find that money in the budget, and I'd like to look very hard at the money we use to keep people in jail. Thank you.
This next question will begin with Ms. Mullins. As a state senator, what would you do to increase or have better tuition assistance and benefits for veterans from the state? The GI Bill is not enough.
I would definitely do absolutely everything in my power. I mean, my dad is a 28-year veteran right now that's had an extremely difficult time just accessing his retirement after 28 years in the service. I mean, he's been deployed just about 20 times, and they screwed him over royally. And I mean, things are just finally starting together after about 100 advocates. And I think it's disgusting. When you make a promise, you uphold that promise. Whether or not, like, no matter what. I mean, these guys like my dad and even my brother who went to Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, they went over there doing what they in their hearts believed was right, and they did what they thought was protecting the rest of us. And they come back here, and then once the government no longer needs their service, and they retire, and they're all deemed, mentally ill or with PTSD, and they cut off their retirements and pensions, and, you know what I mean, just act like they have nothing to say. And I think it's disrespectful, and I would do anything and everything. And if anybody has any ideas on how I can, help veterans and stuff, please don't hesitate to send me an email.
Mr. Patrick.
I'm very attuned to this issue. My father was a combat veteran, World War II, and he suffered from PTSD before many people really knew what it was. I got to remind people that Massachusetts is the best state in the nation for taking care of our veterans. We have done a lot, but all too often our veterans don't know about it. But we have veterans agents covering every town in the Commonwealth. People should get in touch with them, and veterans should get in touch with them, or families of veterans should get in touch with them to find out what is available, what services are available. But in the final analysis, a lot of this is incumbent upon the federal government to provide these services. And the Commonwealth can only do so much. What is disturbing to me is that if somebody gets in trouble, a veteran gets in trouble legally, oftentimes they have their benefits taken away from them. This is not right. We need to work with these folks and make sure that they're well taken care of and their issues are addressed. But again, Massachusetts does a hell of a job. We can do more, and we need to encourage our federal delegation, our congressional delegation, to do more in this area. Thank you.
Mr. deMacedo.
I do agree with Matt. Massachusetts is really at the forefront in regards to how we treat our veterans, and I'm very proud of that. And over the years that I've tried to do everything I can to support these people, because the reality is we're here today and having an open and fair debate about our political system because there were people that are willing to put their lives on the line each and every day overseas so that we could enjoy what we enjoy here. So I will do whatever I can to support the people who've, the men and women who risk their lives and frankly take time out of their lives from going to school, doing things because they're overseas protecting us. So when they get back, they deserve everything that we can do to help them with an education, to give them the opportunities and the skills that they need to get started again and start their own lives afresh and anew. And I'll be committed to that, just as I've been as a state representative, as a state senator.
This question will begin with Mr. Patrick. Related to taxes, are you in favor of raising taxes or reducing taxes, and are you in favor of lowering the sales tax?
I would be in favor of lowering the sales tax as long as we could either find the savings in our budget or come up with an alternative source of revenue. I'm not for raising taxes or cutting taxes. I'm for fair taxes. I think we need to take a look at our system, which really is not fair at this time. We have the bottom quintile of our families making the least amount of money that are paying 10% of their income in taxes, in state taxes, as a family. The top 1% in Massachusetts is paying less than 5%. The top 5% is paying less than 7%. So you can see that there's an inequity there that should be fixed, and we can do that by manipulating the tax system to make it fair to everyone. And that's sort of something I think is kind of interesting. I really get into it. It's fun to try to figure these things out, solve these problems, and that's something I would work very hard to do if I'm elected. Thank you.
Mr. deMacedo.
In Massachusetts, I don't think we have any shortage of taxes. I think we are probably one of the highest tax states in the nation. Only New York, I think, and California beat us in that regard. So I don't think we need more taxes, and frankly, I think there are opportunities that we could have some less taxes. I was not in support of the sales tax that was increased to 6.25. I think we should see it go back to 5%. The reality is businesses make decisions, people make decisions based on tax policy. So what you have, especially in border communities, is people going over to New Hampshire and other areas to buy, appliances, to buy TVs over the border, to go areas because taxes are cheaper. Gasoline taxes are cheaper. There are no shortages of taxes, and in Massachusetts, I'm not saying that we don't need to operate government, but we need to be mindful. So for me, I don't think that we need to raise taxes. I think what we need to do is live within our means. If we live within our means, then we can be successful. It wasn't too long ago the governor had proposed a $1.9 billion tax increase. He did that, and even the Democratic legislature rejected it because of the implications that it would have on our economy. This year's budget, you'll see, it was actually increased by almost $1.9 billion without the tax increase for the most part, because the economy grew. We want to grow out of this. We want the economy to grow. We don't need to take more from the hardworking men and women in the Commonwealth.
Ms. Mullins.
Okay, I just quickly want to say that I don't think Massachusetts is actually taking care of our veterans. Just from my experience with my father, I feel like the local churches did more for him than the state did. But anyway, moving on, as far as the sales tax in Massachusetts goes, I think that the sales tax is basically like a cancer for the middle and lower classes. Because not only, like Matt said, me, in the lower class, in the middle class, paying more of our incomes in these taxes, but we're also losing the business for our local businesses and stuff that go out to other states. So it's like a lose-lose in so many different areas and perspectives. And so I think sales tax, New Hampshire doesn't have sales tax. If we didn't have sales tax, do you know how many people are going over there into New Hampshire that all these little businesses here in Massachusetts would be profiting off of? They're losing so much money, and then in addition, they're paying more money into the pot. So it's just like, I would just completely, no more taxes, and we need to start reducing as many as possible, especially the ones that sit here and hurt the people that are paying more in. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. deMacedo, related to ballot question 1, what is your opinion on that question and the indexing of the gas tax to inflation or the consumer price index?
Well, just following up in regards to the previous question, they did increase the gasoline tax by 3 cents a gallon. But the reality is if they're going to decide as a legislature if this is the gasoline tax, this is the indexing of the gasoline tax. So that's right.
Right. Question 1. Yeah.
And by not having to go back to the legislature when you increase a tax in the future and it's going to be tied to CPI, you're going to continually see this tax go up without those individuals that have been charged by our constituents to make these decisions. I think it's a dangerous precedent to start, incrementally increasing taxes automatically. I think that that's a danger, because if it happens here, it'll happen in other areas, and you're going to consistently see legislators passing the buck, and just so that the revenues will continue to increase without them having to take a difficult vote. I think it's always good to have legislators have to stand up, yes or no, do they support a tax increase or don't they support a tax increase? That makes sense, and so this, for me, to repeal the gasoline tax index makes a great deal of sense, and I will be voting yes.
Ms. Mullins?
Okay, so right off the bat, that's basically taxation without representation. I would feel pretty bad if I were elected as your state senator, getting paid a per diem pay that takes care of all my travel expenses, including the gas. To sit there and then impose a 3% increase, gas tax on everybody else. So then not only are the rest of us paying our gas and this new gas tax, we're also paying the gas for the same people that are making us pay more. So it's like a double whammy. And it's not fair. It's taxation without representation, and it shouldn't happen, period.
Mr. Patrick?
Yes, I am for the increase in the gas tax, but I'm opposed to indexing as well. We need to improve our infrastructure, our highways, and our mass transportation. It's falling apart. And we will put a lot of people to work in that effort if we, once we start it, and the gasoline tax is the appropriate way to pay for it. I will say, in regards to Heather's claim that state representatives and senators take money for gasoline and our expenses. That's true, but I want to point out that my colleague and myself were the ones, probably the only ones in the House that had the opportunity to take a huge tax benefit, and we didn't do it. I don't know if you remember that conversation we had, but and I give him credit for that. But I want to just back up to the last question. Do I still have time? Okay. Vinny mentioned that we are one of the high-tax states, and if you just go by per capita, that's true, but if you take it as we should, as a percentage of our income, we are very low tax, and that's how we should be compared to other states. You don't want to put us in comparison to Alabama or Mississippi just on a per capita basis, because it's not fair, because they don't earn the same amount of money as we do. Thank you.
The next question, and this was the only related transportation question that we received, and we'll begin with Ms. Mullins. If a third bridge over the canal is built, do you favor public financing or public-private partnership to cover the cost of construction?
I think, like, where it stands right now, like, the two bridges we have are in, like, much need of renovation. I mean, from what I've read, actually, they're actually, I think, on the top 50, like, worst bridges in the country list. And I mean, I think before we go building a third, we should perhaps maybe make the two that we have a little bit safer. Also, I mean, there's all this talk about these new, like, commuter rails and new bridges and stuff like that. While there's such huge issues, like the Pilgrim Power Plant and you know, the watershed issues and, like, you know, the nitrogen contaminating our waters and ruining the quality of life for everybody here on the Cape. And it's just like, I really think we should start prioritizing a little bit better. And before we go building a third bridge when everybody's, you know, managed to live with the two that we have, I think we could find, you know, some better things to put at the top of the list.
Mr. Patrick?
I'm not sure I'm in favor of a third bridge to begin with. I'd have to, you know, really hear all the pros and cons. I haven't been privy to those discussions that are going on at the Cape Cod Commission. And I most definitely would want to talk to the people in the area. I would be more in favor of expanding our mass transportation, especially the commuter rail to Buzzards Bay. I think that's where we need to put our money in, and we could even have buses that would transfer people from parking lots on the Cape to the commuter rail in Buzzards Bay. Another bridge raises a whole lot of new issues, and I'm not on board with that yet.
Mr. deMacedo?
I want to congratulate the administration for actually looking at this concept insofar as there are public safety concerns, and I think it's legitimate that people know on those individual times through the summer that people are leaving, especially on a Sunday, where the traffic sometimes can back up 10, 15, 20 miles. That's a public safety concern, and so I think it's fair to look at it. I do have a little concern, to be honest with you, in regards to the public-private partnership, because understanding that the private sector isn't going to do this for free. If they're going to do this, they want to be compensated for this. And if they do that, they, you know, from what we understand, the models that they're talking about will be compensated to the tune of between 8 and 12%. And if the Commonwealth were to borrow the funds to redo the infrastructure improvements, it would be about 4%. And so obviously we're going to be paying a premium for that third bridge if you do it that way. That being said, because our debt limit is so high in the Commonwealth, it's very difficult for us to make the case for a third bridge because it would be very expensive. I think it's important to look at because it is a public safety issue. However, the expense that is going to be incurred to try to make that happen is going to be difficult, and I do not support the concept of tolling people to be able to come on and off the Cape. I don't think we should, who are sitting here on Cape Cod, be required to pay a toll to go in and out of Cape Cod.
Okay. The next question, and we'll begin with Mr. Patrick. Related to the environment, there was a question, do you believe that human behavior is contributing to global warming? And then related to the environment also, whatever statement you might like to make about the use of herbicides that's being used on the Cape now in order to control vegetation and also the tree cutting on Route 6?
Great. So the question is global warming caused by humans and our activities? Yes, I think all the science points to that. You know, there's almost near unanimity among scientists that that is the case, and the hockey stick is the example that I can point to. As of our industrial revolution in the late 1800s, you see the spike in temperatures really jump off the charts. So that's something that we need to do. We need to address, especially in this district. Our coastal communities, well, not here in this district, but also Barnstable, but our coastal communities in the Plymouth and Barnstable Senate District are very subject to global warming and sea level rise, and we need to be able to address that. And I can't remember what the second part
Just
is.
related to the tree cutting that's taking
Oh,
place.
okay,
and the
right.
herbicide
Yeah, I'm opposed to
vegetation.
that. I think we can get goats and things like that to keep the brush down. Thanks.
Mr. deMacedo.
Insofar as the tree cutting, I just wanted to touch on, we actually just had a meeting not too long ago with, just a few days ago with the Department of Transportation. That was a huge mistake, and it's a shame that that's happened. Clearing those trees in the middle of the highway was an incredible problem, and it's I don't know how they're going to fix it. They said they're going to fix it, and the contractor is going to be responsible in that regard. So to that extent, I don't support that. As far as the herbicides, it's certainly something I'd like to take a look at. And I know this question has just come up, and I don't know enough about what NSTAR is doing in regards to the herbicides and how they're treating it, if it's chemically based or not. And I'd like to find that out before I speak to that. And lastly, in regards to climate change, and the question is, are individuals affecting that? It's clearly there's been a lot of talk about this, and it's a lot of conversation. And I think, from my perspective, it seems as though that we are having clearly some effect in regards to that. The question is how much and what do we do to stop that? And that is something I'm not 100% convinced of what we exactly should do. I know there's talks about carbon taxes and other things. What does that mean? How much is that going to cost? And what can we really impact if we do that? That's something I'm not a scientist in that regard, but I certainly am trying to understand and try to do the best we can to make sure that we protect our environment and that we're good stewards of the land that we are so fortunate to control.
Ms. Mullins.
Yeah, so I'm going to start off with the tree cutting. So when I drove down Route 6 the other day and I saw that, I probably had the same feeling if I were to walk home and see my daughter's beautifully long hair hacked off. I mean, it was terrible. I was just like, oh, I mean, Cape Cod, it's such like a little cozy type place. And I mean, like I grew up here, those trees were always there. It's just like, I feel like I don't want it to change. It used to be so nice. But anyway, as far as global warming, I think there's definitely an issue with global warming. I mean, it's undebatable. It exists. But I mean, the problem, what really can like a state senator or any government do? I mean, it's all about the people. It's like the choices we make in our day-to-day lives, whether or not we choose to make decisions like, use energy-efficient light bulbs in our home, whether or not we choose to stop using like plastic bags. And like we can make all these little decisions that contribute. And if every single one of us made those decisions, then we would solve the problem. It's not something that one person can fix. It takes like everybody to do their part and to actually care. I mean, we can keep putting it off, but I mean, if it turns out to be a mistake, then nobody can really complain about it at that point. So I hope everybody does their part.
Okay, thank you. I believe this will be the last question before we do the closing statements. And this came from a student here, and it's related to funding higher education. The student clearly wants to know how the 4 Cs can get more money, but as a state senator, what could you do to enable better funding of higher education? And we'll begin with Mr. deMacedo.
We recently have tried to address the issue in regards to funding for higher education, where we in the Commonwealth try to support up to 50, close to, try to get to the 50% mark in regards to education funding for community colleges, state colleges, and the like. The one thing I have seen, and I have 2 daughters in college right now, so I'm very well aware of this, is that the price of college is out of hand, and it's getting more and more expensive. And that is something that is disappointing, and we have to try to rein in those costs, because at the trajectory that we're seeing now, there is just no way. I know that when I went to college, and I don't think it was that long ago, but in 1987, for a private school, I was paying $10,000. Now you're seeing the same individual going to the same college is paying $40,000. That's 4 times the cost. The inflation that is happening in the education world is just unsustainable, and we have to do a better job. I don't think when we subsidize it, especially at the federal level, it necessarily helps the problem, because what happens is that as you keep throwing money, it keeps driving up the costs. We have to try to rein in the costs of education, make it more affordable for people. I'm thrilled that we have a community college system that people can get great educations at reasonable prices. I think that's something that's worth investing in. I have invested it in the past, in my 16 years. I will continue to invest in trying to make education more affordable for individuals, especially at the community college level.
Ms. Mullins.
Okay, so I'm definitely a fan of higher education, and one of the things that concerns me is when I was actually going over the 2014 budget the other day and trying to get familiar with all the little ins and outs, and I believe like one line item alone was about $500 million to Massachusetts University, which has a few campuses. And I'm thinking, like, there was obviously more money, like, and I believe every dollar, I think, was matched by a federal grant to the school. So now we're talking around $1 billion. At that point, why is anybody paying to go to these schools? I mean, it just seems like a little crazy, like that there's so much money already being given to universities, and at the same time, students are coming out $200,000 in debt. I mean, it seems crazy. And in terms of getting the funds for higher education, I mean, I've already put out some ideas on, decriminalizing drugs and saving the $1 trillion that we spend on that. So, money well spent, and maybe more people will start getting these higher educations and stop ending up in jail cells.
Mr. Patrick.
Clearly, when I was in the House and we had those budget deficits, we went real hard at UMass budgets, and we really cut them to death. I want to say now that that's probably the worst thing we could do. The best way we could invest our money is to put it into our colleges, our UMass system, and I agree with my former colleague that we have to encourage them to be more cost effective. We have to find some way to introduce some competition into the system, so there is some pressure to keep those rates down, but at the same time, let's not renege on our promise, and we're fortunate to have a great university system. Let's keep it that way. But again, we have to do more to keep the costs down. I frankly would like to see community colleges free to everyone that can qualify. There might be more that we can do with online education, and in any event, I think it's too bad that we have to revert to our university system whenever we need to cut the budget.
Okay, we'll now begin with our closing statements. And again, the order of the closing statements was determined by a random drawing before we began our program. And the first statement will be from the Democratic candidate, Matt Patrick.
I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. It's very impressive to see that you've hung in there this long. You have a very clear choice for state senator November 4th. I have a great deal of respect for my opponents, but our politics are very different. If you want your next senator to protect a woman's right to choose, you will vote for me. If you want your next senator to vote to protect safe access for family planning clinics, then you will vote for me. If you want your next senator to protect marriage equality, then you will vote for me. If you want your next senator to protect the right of public school children to read books like The Diary of Anne Frank, then you will vote for me. If you want your senator to work for a fair tax system, then you will vote for me. If you want your senator to have experience meeting the payroll of two medium-sized organizations for over 17 years, then you will vote for me. If you want your next senator to have experience successfully passing legislation that improves people's lives, then you will vote for me. If you want your next senator to work to create more good-paying jobs and clean energy, then you will vote for me. If you want your senator to work to make college affordable and help college graduates refinance their debt, then you will vote for me. Making good things happen and solving problems are things that I enjoy doing. If you want your next senator to dedicate his office to making good things happen for the people he represents, then you will vote for me. My name is Matt Patrick, and I'm running for the Plymouth and Barnstable Senate seat. Please vote for me on November 4th, and you can find out more information at electmattpatrick.org. Thanks.
Closing statement from the Republican candidate, Vinny deMacedo.
And again, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Cape Cod League of Women Voters for this wonderful opportunity for those of us who are seeking office, and to the Cape Cod Times coordinating this event. I just want to say that it has been an incredible honor that I have had of serving the people of the 1st Plymouth District for the past 16 years. I am proud to say that in that period of time, I have worked tirelessly on behalf of my constituents to make sure that I put people before politics, that I made sure that I worked with people on both sides of the aisle for the betterment of my constituents. And I think as you have to make this very difficult decision on who is going to be taking the place of the Senate President, Therese Murray, for the Plymouth and Barnstable District State Senate seat, I only ask you, because I know many people probably don't know me here, but I ask you to reach out to the communities that know us best, whether it's Bourne or Falmouth or Plymouth, and find out what the people of our community think about us. I am proud to say that over the past 7 election cycles, my community has consistently sent me back, as I said, by a 2-to-1 margin, and I believe that is because they feel that I have done the job, that I've advocated on their behalf, that I've tried hard to be an advocate for everyone in my community. And so with that, as you make this decision, I hope you'll consider me, Vinny deMacedo, to be your next state senator, and I ask you for your vote on November 4th.
And now a closing statement from the Libertarian candidate, Heather Mullins.
Okay, so I totally planned the whole time to thank you guys at the end of this, the League of Women Voters and Cape Cod Times, for allowing democracy to exist. But because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, getting to share my ideas and my thoughts. And I've been fearless throughout all of this, and I'm doing it for the right reasons. And although I might not have the political experience that my two opponents have, don't underestimate me. I mean, Steve Jobs didn't have experience when he became one of the leading men in technology. He was actually 21 at the time and did it in his garage. So you can never underestimate people. And for 23 years old, I feel like I brought quite a bit to the table today and shown what I'm capable of. And despite working 40 hours a week and being a single full-time mom, I still managed to bring with me as much information as I have today. And if I were to have the opportunity to devote myself full-time up on Beacon Hill to these issues, rest assured I know a lot more and I'd have a lot more to bring to the table. Don't underestimate me, please, because it's grassroots innovation that is what builds, buildings and cities. It's what creates everything that we use in our daily lives. I mean, you can't keep going with the same old all the time. And these could be totally great guys, honestly. And I'm just saying, give me an opportunity and honestly think, about what I have to bring to the table as well. And don't write off any other third-party candidates, because every single one of us, anybody here could run, anybody here could come up here, and you guys all have your own stories, your own experiences, and your own things to share. And I want to be that person that everybody can come to, because I know so many of you. So I just want to thank everybody once again, and the 566 people who signed my nomination papers. You guys are the best. And Daniel Fishman as well, and the Libertarian Party, who's just believed in me and supported me up until this point. So thank you guys, this is amazing.